There is a moment in your life, a single, sharp second, when you realize that everything you believed about your family was a lie. For me, that moment didn't happen in a courtroom or a hospital or in the middle of a screaming argument. It happened on a sunny Saturday afternoon in my grandmother's backyard, surrounded by fairy lights and the smell of her famous lemon cake. It happened while I was holding an empty box. My name is Clara, and for 32 years, I thought I knew my role in the family. I was the forgotten one, the middle child, the one who didn't become a doctor, didn't marry into wealth, and didn't buy a mansion in the hills. I was the art teacher who lived in a small apartment downtown, driving a car that was 10 years old. My parents, Richard and Eleanor, were what society calls successful. My older brother Marcus was their pride, a successful surgeon with a trophy wife and a house that looked like a magazine cover. My younger sister, Sophia, was the baby of the family, a corporate lawyer who could charm anyone into anything. And then there was me, Clara, the one they forgot to pick up from school, the one whose art shows they never attended, the one who was always told, "You'll find your footing eventually," as if my passion for painting was just a phase I never grew out of. But there was one person who saw me. One person who looked at me and didn't see a disappointment. My grandmother, Evelyn. Grandma was the heart of our family. She wasn't wealthy in the way my parents were, but she was rich in a way that mattered. Her house smelled like lavender and old books. She had a garden that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale. And every year, on her birthday, she would host a party where, for a few hours, we all pretended to be a happy family. I lived for those parties. Not for the food or the champagne, but for the moment when she would pull me aside, squeeze my hands, and whisper, "You're the artist, Clara. Never let them dull your colors."
This year was different. This year, Grandma had turned 80, and the air felt different. My parents had been visiting her more often lately, whispering in her kitchen. Marcus and Sophia were acting strange too, smiling at me a little too hard, a little too fake. I felt it in my gut. Something was brewing. The party was extravagant, at least by Grandma's standards. The backyard was decorated with white roses, her favorite, and there was a string quartet playing softly under the oak tree. I arrived early, as I always did, to help set up. I brought her a painting I had spent 6 months on. It was a watercolor of her garden, the one she loved. When I gave it to her, her eyes filled with tears. She held my face in her hands and said, "My sweet girl, you have the soul of a poet." I felt safe in that moment. I felt like everything was okay. But then the guests arrived, and with them, my parents. My mother, Eleanor, swept in wearing a dress that cost more than my rent. She kissed Grandma on the cheek without really touching her, the way she always did. My father, Richard, clapped Marcus on the back, praising his latest surgical innovation loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Sophia was on her phone, discussing a merger, her high heels sinking into the grass she clearly wished was concrete. I stayed in the background, serving drinks, keeping a low profile. I was used to it, the invisible daughter. Dinner was served, a catered affair that Grandma insisted on paying for herself, despite her fixed income. As we ate, I noticed my father kept glancing at a small box wrapped in silver paper that was sitting next to Grandma's plate. It was the only gift on the table. Usually, we all put gifts on a side table, but this one was front and center. Then it happened. My mother cleared her throat. She stood up, tapping her glass with a fork. The chatter died down. She gave a smile that was all teeth, the kind she used when she was about to make a speech that was really a performance.
"Family," she began, her voice dripping with synthetic warmth. "Before Evelyn blows out her candles, we wanted to do something a little special. As you all know, Evelyn is the matriarch of this family, and as she enters this beautiful new chapter, Richard and I wanted to teach our children a lesson about legacy." I froze. Teach our children a lesson. Those words felt like ice water in my veins. My father stood up next to her, holding the silver box. He walked over to my grandmother and kissed her on the forehead. Then he turned to the three of us, Marcus, Sophia, and me. We were sitting at a small table together, though it was really just Marcus and Sophia talking, while I pushed my food around my plate. "This year," my father said, his voice booming with authority. We decided to shake things up. Instead of just giving Grandma gifts, we wanted to see which of our children understands the true meaning of family, which of you knows what Grandma values most. My stomach dropped. I looked at Grandma. Her face had gone pale. She was gripping the edge of her chair, her knuckles white. She looked like she wanted to stand up, to say something, but my mother placed a firm hand on her shoulder, a hand that said, "Stay seated." My father continued, "We have a gift here, a token from Evelyn to one of you. But to find out who gets it, we need to see your generosity. We asked each of you to bring a gift for Grandma today. Marcus, what did you bring?" Marcus stood up, grinning. He walked over and handed Grandma a velvet box. Inside was a diamond bracelet. The crowd gasped. "Only the best for my grandmother," he said. My parents beamed. "Sophia?" my father called. Sophia handed over a set of keys. "A weekend getaway to a luxury spa in the mountains," she announced. "First class, all paid for." More applause. Then the air shifted. My father looked at me. "Clara," he said, and the way he said my name was like a teacher calling on a student they already knew was going to fail. I stood up, my legs shaking. I walked over to Grandma and handed her the painting wrapped in brown paper. "I painted her garden," I said softly. "I thought she might like to have it on her wall." My mother made a sound, a small, dismissive puff of air. "How quaint," she said, but the word quaint was a slap in the face. It meant worthless. I went back to my seat, my face burning. I knew I couldn't compete with diamonds and luxury spas, but I thought she would understand. My father cleared his throat. "Well," he said, holding up the silver box, "Evelyn has been holding on to something very precious, a family heirloom, if you will, and tonight she was going to give it to the child who proved they valued her the most." He walked over to Marcus first, holding the box. Marcus reached out, but my father pulled it back, laughing. "Just kidding, son," he said. Then he walked to Sophia and did the same. The guests laughed along, thinking it was a game. Then he walked to me. He placed the box in my hands. "For you, Clara," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "For your effort." I looked down. The box was light, too light. I felt a lump in my throat. My mother was smirking. My father had a smug look on his face. Marcus was whispering something to Sophia, and they were both snickering. I tore the silver paper off. I opened the box. It was empty. My heart stopped. My mother's voice cut through the silence. "Maybe next year, Clara, you can afford to buy her a real gift, and you'll get a real heirloom." The guests let out a few awkward chuckles. They didn't know what to do. It was a public humiliation dressed up as a family tradition. I looked at my grandmother. Tears were streaming down her face, but she wasn't crying because of the embarrassment. She was crying because she was furious. She opened her mouth to speak, but my father quickly handed her a glass of champagne. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said, effectively silencing her. I sat there, holding the empty box, staring at the blank velvet interior. I felt the heat of 1,000 eyes on me. I felt the sting of a lifetime of being the least favorite. But in that moment, sitting there with that empty box, I felt something else, something cold, something sharp. I felt the exact moment my heart turned to stone. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I simply looked up, met my mother's eyes, and smiled. A smile that didn't reach my eyes. A smile that promised nothing good. I didn't know it then, but that empty box was the best gift I had ever received, because it finally opened my eyes to the truth, and it set in motion a chain of events that would bring my parents' empire crashing down. But the real twist, the one that made my blood run cold, it came later that night, when I found the note hidden inside the lining of the box. A note written by my grandmother's own hand. A note that told me that the empty box wasn't a joke at my expense. It was a signal. It was my grandmother's cry for help. I didn't open the box again until I got home. I drove back to my small apartment in a daze, the empty silver box sitting on the passenger seat like a cruel joke. The streets of the city blurred past me. I wasn't really seeing them. I was replaying the scene in my head, over and over. The sound of the laughter, the way my father had handed me the box like I was a dog being thrown a bone, the way my mother had called my painting quaint. I parked my car and sat there for a long time, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I was waiting for the tears to come, for the familiar wave of sadness that always followed their rejection. But it didn't come. Instead, there was just this cold, hollow anger, a quiet rage that felt new and terrifying and, honestly, a little liberating. I carried the box upstairs to my studio apartment. The painting supplies were still scattered across the table. My easel held a half-finished portrait of a little girl looking out a rainy window. I set the box down on the table and just stared at it. Why? I thought. Why go through the trouble? If they wanted to humiliate me, they could have just ignored me, like they always did. They didn't have to wrap an empty box. They didn't have to make a spectacle of it. That's when I realized the truth. This wasn't just cruelty for the sake of cruelty. This was theater. This was a performance for my grandmother. They were sending her a message. They were telling her, look, the artist is worthless. Don't give her anything. Put your resources with the winners. I picked up the box. I turned it over in my hands. It was a nice box. Velvet interior, sturdy silver paper. As I turned it, I noticed something odd. The bottom of the box felt thick. It was deeper than it should have been. I pressed on the velvet lining and my finger sunk slightly. There was a gap. My heart started to beat faster. I grabbed a pair of scissors from my art table and carefully pried up the velvet insert. It was glued down, but gently, as if it was meant to be removed. And there it was, a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age, hidden between the velvet and the cardboard bottom. My hands were shaking as I unfolded it. I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was my grandmother's, that elegant looping cursive that she used for writing recipes and letters. But this wasn't a recipe. It was a note. And the moment I read the first line, the entire world stopped spinning. It said, Clara, my love, if you are reading this, do not be sad. Be clever. They took the real gift from me, but they cannot take the truth. The empty box is not for you. It is proof.
I read the line again. The empty box is not for you. It is proof. What did that mean? Proof of what? I kept reading. For weeks, your parents have been coming to my house. They don't visit because they love me. They visit because they want the land, the property where my house sits. It is the only thing of value I have left. They know I am old. They think I am weak. They want me to sign it over to them so they can sell it to that developer, the one who wants to build the luxury condos. I told them no. I told them I was leaving the land to you. I stopped reading. The paper fell from my hands for a moment as I tried to process this. The land, my grandmother's house, that beautiful garden, the oak tree, the lavender bushes. It was the only place in the world that had ever felt like home to me. My parents wanted to sell it. They wanted to tear it down. And Grandma wanted to give it to me. I picked up the note, my hands trembling even harder now. They were furious, Clara. Your mother screamed at me. Your father threatened to put me in a home if I didn't come to my senses. They said I was being selfish. They said you would just waste the property, that you'd turn it into some hippie art colony. They said I was destroying the family legacy by giving it to you. I knew they would try to take it. I knew they would try to turn everyone against me. So I made a plan. I signed the deed over to you 2 months ago. It's filed with the county. They don't know that yet. They think I'm still holding on to it. Tonight at the party, they told me they were going to humiliate you. They wanted to teach me a lesson about what happens when I favor the wrong child. They wrapped that empty box to make a point, to show me that you are nothing in their eyes, and so I should give them everything. I let them do it, Clara. I sat there and let them hurt you, and I am so sorry. But I had to. I had to let them think they were winning, because if they knew I had already given you the land, they would find a way to take it from you. They would sue you. They would drag you through the courts until you had nothing left. This note is your warning, and it is your weapon. The empty box is the proof. It proves that they are willing to humiliate their own child to get what they want. It proves that they are capable of cruelty. Keep it. If they come for you, if they try to take the land, you show them this box. You show them this note. You remind the world who they really are. You are the artist, Clara. You see the truth when others see only the surface. Now go. Fight for what is yours, not because it is land, but because it is home. I love you. I always have. I always will. Grandma.
I finished reading and I was crying. But these weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of fury, tears of understanding. My parents had spent weeks, months manipulating my grandmother. They had threatened to put her in a nursing home. They had screamed at an 80-year-old woman. And when she refused to give them what they wanted, they turned her birthday party into a public execution of her favorite granddaughter, just to punish her. I wasn't even the target. I was just the tool they used to hurt Grandma. I sat there in the silence of my apartment and I made a decision. It wasn't a hasty decision. It was a cold, calculated one. I was going to take my grandmother's note and I was going to follow her instructions. I was going to be clever. I looked at the empty box. For the first time, I didn't see it as an insult. I saw it as a receipt for their cruelty. I got up and walked to my laptop. I opened a browser and pulled up the county property records. It took me 20 minutes of navigating the confusing website, but finally I found it. The deed to 1247 Maple Street, the property my grandmother had lived on for 60 years. The owner's name was listed, Clara M. Vance. It was done. It had been done for 2 months. The land was mine. A wave of power washed over me. They had no idea. They thought they were still playing the game. They thought the prize was still up for grabs. They had thrown a party, handed me an empty box, and laughed in my face, all while the real treasure was already sitting in my name. I closed the laptop. I placed the note back inside the box, tucked under the velvet lining where it belonged. I put the box in my safe, a small fireproof safe I kept for my important documents. Then I sat down on my couch and looked at the painting I had given Grandma, the garden. I was going to save that garden, but I wasn't going to do it by fighting them directly. I wasn't going to scream or cry or beg them to understand. No, I was going to do something far more painful for people like my parents. I was going to let them destroy themselves. Over the next few days, I started to play a role. I acted defeated. I acted broken. I stopped showing up to family dinners. When my mother called to check on me, which was really just her way of gloating, I let my voice sound small and tired. I told her I was processing the events of the party. She ate it up. I heard through the grapevine that my parents were pushing Grandma even harder now. They thought they had won. They thought they had broken my spirit and, by extension, broken Grandma's will to resist. They thought she would sign over the land just to make peace. But Grandma was playing along too. She called me late one night after my parents had left her house. Her voice was weak, but there was a spark in it. "They're meeting with a developer next week," she whispered. "They think they're going to get the land from me. They're already planning how to spend the money." "Let them plan," I said. "Let them dream." "What are you going to do, Clara?" she asked. I looked at the empty box sitting on my table. I looked at the note inside. "I'm going to throw a party," I said. "The best party they've ever been to." The next 3 weeks were the most intense of my life. I had to become an actress. Every interaction with my family was a performance. I attended a dinner at Marcus's house, and I sat quietly while he and Sophia discussed their investment portfolios. I smiled when my mother bragged about a new car she bought. I even thanked my father when he patronizingly offered to help me with my rent, implying that I was struggling financially because of my poor choices. Inside, I was counting the days. I started making calls, quiet calls, strategic calls. My grandmother had given me the deed, but she had also given me a list of names, lawyers she trusted, old friends who knew the truth about the family's history, a journalist who had been covering the corruption in the city's development permits. I visited a lawyer first, a sharp woman named Miss Delgado, who had been Grandma's friend for 30 years. I brought the empty box, the note, and the deed. Miss Delgado read the note 3 times, her expression unreadable. "Your grandmother is a very smart woman," she finally said. "The note is dated. It proves coercion. If they try to contest the deed, we can prove they were threatening her to get her to change it." "I don't want to just keep the land," I said. "I want to stop them. I want to expose what they did to her." Miss Delgado leaned back. "That's a different kind of fight, but if you have the proof, and if you have the courage, it's a fight you can win." I also called the journalist. His name was David. He had been investigating the development company my parents were working with, Sterling Group. He told me that Sterling Group had a reputation for pushing through projects by pressuring elderly homeowners to sell. They used middlemen, people like my parents. If your parents are working with them, David said, they're not just selling land. They're helping to displace families. They're part of a scheme that's been running for years. I felt sick. I knew my parents were greedy, but I didn't know they were corrupt. They weren't just trying to take my inheritance. They were participating in something that hurt dozens of families. That's when I decided that my revenge wouldn't just be about the land. It would be about justice. I asked David to keep digging. I told him I would give him everything I had, but I needed time. I needed to set the stage.
My parents, meanwhile, were growing bolder. They scheduled a family meeting at Grandma's house. I arrived to find Marcus, Sophia, my parents, and a man in a suit I didn't recognize. His name was Mr. Sterling. He was the head of Sterling Group. The meeting was held in Grandma's living room, the same living room where she had read me bedtime stories. Now it was filled with vultures. My father started the meeting. "As you all know, Grandma's getting older," he said, as if she wasn't sitting right there in her favorite armchair listening. "We need to make decisions about the property. It's too much for her to maintain. We've been talking to Mr. Sterling here, and he's made a very generous offer." Mr. Sterling nodded. He looked at Grandma like she was a problem to be solved. Grandma looked at me. I gave her a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. "I'm not selling," Grandma said, her voice surprisingly strong. My mother sighed dramatically. "Mom, be reasonable. You can't keep living here alone. You fell last month. You need help. Selling the house gives us the funds to take care of you." Take care of you. I knew what that meant. A cheap nursing home and a pocket full of cash for them. "I have help," Grandma said. "Clara comes by 3 times a week." My father laughed. "Clara, she can't take care of a cactus, Mother. Be serious." That was the moment I almost broke. I wanted to stand up and scream, but I held myself together. I looked down at my hands. I played the part of the scared, useless daughter. Maybe you're right," I said quietly, not looking at anyone. "Maybe the house should be sold." Everyone froze. My mother's eyes widened in surprise. She looked at my father. A silent conversation passed between them. "She's given up. Good." Marcus looked at me with something that might have been pity, but was probably just disgust. "See, Clara, that's the most sensible thing you've said all year." Grandma looked at me, confused. I met her eyes, and I gave her a look that said, "Trust me." I continued, keeping my voice small. "I know I can't compete with you guys. I know I don't have money. I want what's best for Grandma. If selling the house means she's taken care of, then I support it." My father clapped his hands together. "Well, there you have it, a family consensus. Mother, you're outvoted. Let's get the papers." But Mr. Sterling held up a hand. "Not so fast. The deal is contingent on the deed being clear. I've run a title search." He pulled out a piece of paper. "According to county records, the property was transferred 2 months ago. It's no longer in Evelyn Vance's name." The room went silent. Dead silent.
"What?" my father barked. "That's impossible. She never—" "It's in the name of Clara M. Vance," Mr. Sterling said, reading from the paper. "The property belongs to the daughter." My mother's head snapped toward me. Her eyes were like lasers. "What did you do?" she hissed. I stood up. I stopped playing the scared little girl. I looked at each of them. My father, my mother, Marcus, Sophia, and Mr. Sterling. I let them see the coldness in my eyes. "I didn't do anything," I said. "Grandma did. She gave me the house 2 months ago, before you started threatening her, before you tried to pressure her into selling to your developer friend here." My father's face turned red. "You conniving little—" "Careful," I said, my voice sharp. I walked over to my bag and pulled out the empty silver box. I held it up. "Do you remember this, don't you, Dad? The empty box you gave me at Grandma's party? The one you used to humiliate me in front of everyone?" He didn't answer. He just stared at the box. "Do you want to know what I found inside?" I asked. I pulled out the note. I unfolded it. "This is a letter from Grandma. In it, she details how you and Mom threatened to put her in a home if she didn't sign over the land, how you screamed at her, how you manipulated her. She wrote it the night before the party, knowing you were going to try to break me." I looked at Mr. Sterling. "Your company has a reputation for using family pressure to get what you want. I have a journalist friend who is very interested in this story. In fact, he's waiting for a call from me." My mother stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "You think you can blackmail us? You, a failed artist living in a shoebox?" "I'm not blackmailing anyone," I said. "I'm giving you a choice. You walk away, right now. You leave Grandma alone. You drop your deal with Sterling Group. You stop trying to steal this land. And I won't go public with the note. I won't tell the world that my parents, the great Richard and Eleanor Vance, tried to steal from their own mother."
My father stepped toward me. He was furious. "You have no idea what you're doing. You think a note is going to hurt us? We'll sue you. We'll bury you in legal fees so deep you'll be painting murals for food stamps." I smiled. It was a cold, hard smile. "Go ahead. Sue me. We'll go to court, and I'll invite every media outlet in the city. I'll put your empty box on the witness stand. I'll let the jury read Grandma's note out loud. I'll let them see what kind of people you are." I turned to Mr. Sterling. "And you, how do you think your investors will feel when they find out you're using families to strong-arm elderly women? Do you think they'll want to be associated with a lawsuit that involves coercion, elder abuse, and fraud?" Mr. Sterling's face went pale. He looked at my father. "Richard, I wasn't told about any of this. You said you had control of the property." My father sputtered. I did. She's lying." "Am I?" I held up the note. "This is dated. It's witnessed by her neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, the same Mrs. Higgins who heard you screaming at Grandma through the wall. Should I call her?" The room was in chaos. Marcus and Sophia were staring at me like they had never seen me before. My mother was shaking with rage. My father was looking at Mr. Sterling, who was already packing his briefcase. "I'm out," Mr. Sterling said. "Call me when you have your house in order." He left without shaking anyone's hand. I turned back to my parents. "The house is mine, the land is mine, and if either of you ever so much as looks at Grandma the wrong way again, I will ruin you. I will make sure everyone knows that your success was built on stepping on the people who loved you. Do you understand?" My mother looked at me with pure hatred. "You're dead to us," she spat. "Good," I said. "Then we're even, because you were never really alive to me." They left. Marcus and Sophia followed, looking over their shoulders as if I might throw something at them. And then it was just me and Grandma. She was crying, but this time they were tears of relief. She opened her arms and I fell into them. I held her tight, feeling her frail body shake. "You were magnificent," she whispered. "No," I said. "I was just tired of being invisible." That night I stayed at Grandma's house. I slept in my old room, the one with the floral wallpaper and the window that looked out at the garden. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was home. But the war wasn't over. My parents had retreated, but they hadn't surrendered. And I knew, deep down, that they would come back. They were too proud, too greedy to let this go. But I was ready, because I had the truth. And I had something they didn't have. I had nothing left to lose.
For a month after that confrontation, things were quiet. Too quiet. I moved into my grandmother's house full-time. I wanted to be there to take care of her, but also I didn't trust my parents to stay away. I set up my art studio in the sunroom, and every morning I would paint while Grandma sat in her rocking chair, reading or knitting. It was peaceful. It felt like the life I was always supposed to have. But I knew my parents. They weren't the type to lick their wounds and move on. They were the type to regroup, to scheme, to find a new angle. I was right. One afternoon, I received a letter in the mail. It was from a law firm, one of the most expensive firms in the city. The letter was thick, full of legal jargon, but the gist of it was simple. My parents were suing me. They were claiming that Grandma was not of sound mind when she signed the deed over to me. They were claiming I had taken advantage of her age and her declining mental state to steal the property. I read the letter twice, then handed it to Grandma. She read it and her face turned ashen. "They're lying," she whispered. "I was perfectly sound. I'm still sound." "I know, Grandma," I said, "but they have money. They have lawyers. They're going to drag this out. They're going to try to make it so expensive for me to fight that I'll just give up." "What are we going to do?" she asked. I sat down next to her and took her hand. "We're going to do what we planned from the beginning. We're going to let them think they're winning, and then we're going to hit them where it really hurts." I called David, the journalist. I told him about the lawsuit. He was excited.
"This is perfect," he said. "They're escalating. They're giving me more material." I also called Miss Delgado, the lawyer. She reviewed the lawsuit and confirmed what I already suspected. They're going to ask for a competency evaluation. They're going to try to prove your grandmother was senile when she signed the papers. Do you have medical records? Doctor's notes?
I didn't, but Grandma did. She had a physical every 6 months. Her doctor was a kind man who had been treating her for 20 years. He knew her well. He knew she was sharp as a tack. I made an appointment. Meanwhile, my parents were turning up the pressure. They started spreading rumors in the family. I started getting calls from cousins and aunts telling me I was tearing the family apart. They told me I should just give the house back to avoid a scandal. They told me it was selfish to fight my parents in court. I realized then that my parents weren't just attacking me legally. They were attacking my reputation. They were trying to isolate me, to make me the villain. It hurt. It hurt more than I expected. But every time I felt like giving up, I thought about the empty box. I thought about the look on my mother's face when she handed it to me. I thought about the laughter. I was done being the villain of their story. It was time to write my own. The competency evaluation was scheduled for a Tuesday. It was held at Grandma's house in her living room. A court-appointed psychiatrist came to interview her. My parents' lawyer was there, along with Miss Delgado. I sat in the corner, silent. The psychiatrist asked Grandma questions for 2 hours. He asked her about the date, about current events. He asked her about her finances. He asked her why she signed the deed over to me. Grandma answered every question calmly and clearly. She told him, "I gave Clara the house because she loves it. She loves the garden. She loves the land. My son and his wife only see dollar signs. They wanted to sell it to a developer. I worked for this house. I raised my children in this house. I wasn't going to let them turn it into a parking lot." The psychiatrist took notes. At the end of the session, he looked at the lawyers and said, "There's no sign of diminished capacity. Mrs. Vance is fully aware of her actions and their consequences." My parents' lawyer looked deflated. He packed his briefcase and left without saying a word. That night, I thought it was over. I thought the legal battle was won. But the next morning, I got a call from Miss Delgado. Her voice was tense. "Clara, they're not backing down. They filed a new motion. They're not contesting the deed anymore. They're contesting the land itself. They're claiming that part of the property, the back acre where the old oak tree is, was actually given to them by your grandfather before he died. They have a handwritten letter they claim proves it." My blood ran cold. Is it real? It's old. It could be real, or it could be forged. It's going to be hard to prove either way. And if they win, they get 1/3 of the land, enough to sell to the developer, enough to build an entrance to their condos right through Grandma's garden. I hung up the phone and walked out to the backyard. The oak tree stood tall, its branches spreading wide. It was the centerpiece of the garden. If they took that land, they would destroy everything. I sat under the tree, trying to think. My mind was racing. How do I beat this? How do I prove the letter is fake? And then I remembered something. Something Grandma had told me years ago. She had said that my grandfather was a meticulous man. He kept records of everything. He had a filing cabinet in the basement full of old papers, receipts, letters, deeds, everything. I went to the basement. It was dusty and dark. I found the filing cabinet in the corner, rusted shut. It took me an hour to pry it open. Inside were folders, each labeled by year. I started going through them. I looked for anything related to the land. I found the original deed from when my grandparents bought the property. I found tax records. And then, tucked in a folder labeled Personal Correspondence, I found something else. A letter, written in my grandfather's handwriting. It was dated 10 years before he died. It was addressed to my father. The letter said, "Richard, I know you've been asking about the back acre. You want to know if I'll give it to you early. The answer is no. The land belongs to your mother and me. When we are gone, it will go to whoever your mother chooses. Do not ask again. This is final." I read the letter 3 times. It was proof that my father had been trying to get the land for years, proof that my grandfather had explicitly stated that the land would go to Grandma to decide. And the best part? The letter was dated. It was in his handwriting. It was the exact opposite of what my parents were claiming. I called Ms. Delgado immediately. "I found something," I said. "A letter from my grandfather. It proves my father was trying to take the land before Grandpa even died. It proves the letter my parents have is a lie." The next week, we went back to court. The hearing was packed. My parents sat on one side of the aisle with their high-priced lawyer. I sat on the other side with Ms. Delgado and Grandma. My parents' lawyer presented the letter. He claimed it was written by my grandfather, giving the back acre to my father. Then Ms. Delgado stood up. "Your Honor," she said, "the defense would like to present evidence that this letter is fraudulent. We have a letter written by the same hand, dated earlier, which directly contradicts the claims of the plaintiffs." She handed the judge my grandfather's letter. The judge read it. He compared the handwriting. He looked at the dates. Then he looked at my father. "Mr. Vance," the judge said, "do you have any explanation for why your father wrote you a letter specifically telling you not to ask for this land, and yet you now claim he gave it to you?" My father's face went red. He started stammering. That letter is a misunderstanding. He changed his mind later." "Do you have any evidence of that?" the judge asked. "Any later letter? Any witness?" My father looked at his lawyer. His lawyer was silent. The judge shook his head. "I'm dismissing this motion. The land belongs to Clara Vance, and I'm issuing a warning to the plaintiffs. If you bring another frivolous claim against this family, I will hold you in contempt." My parents sat in stunned silence. They had lost. They had spent tens of thousands of dollars on lawyers, and they had lost. As we walked out of the courthouse, Grandma was smiling. She squeezed my arm. "You did it," she said.
I looked back at my parents. They were standing on the steps, glaring at me. My mother's face was twisted with rage. My father looked like a deflated balloon. I didn't say anything to them. I didn't gloat. I just took Grandma's hand and walked away. But the story wasn't over, because the next week, David's article came out. It was front page of the city's biggest newspaper. The headline read, "Prominent Family Accused of Coercing Elderly Matriarch for Land Deal." The article detailed everything: the empty box, the note, the threats, the fraudulent letter. It named my parents, it named the developer, it exposed the whole scheme. The fallout was immediate. The developer pulled out of the deal. My father lost 3 major clients. My mother's charity board asked her to resign. Marcus and Sophia, who had supported them, faced backlash in their own professional circles. My parents tried to deny it. They tried to spin it, but the evidence was public. The note was public. The empty box became a symbol of greed and cruelty. Within a month, my parents had lost everything they had spent a lifetime building. Their reputations were destroyed, their social circle evaporated. They were left with nothing but their mansion, which they could no longer afford to maintain. They didn't call me. They didn't apologize. I didn't expect them to. But one day, I got a letter in the mail. It wasn't from a lawyer. It was from my father. It was short. It said, "I hope you're happy. You destroyed us." I read the letter and I felt nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction, just a quiet sense of peace. I wrote back one sentence. "I didn't destroy you. You destroyed yourselves the moment you handed me that empty box."
That was 3 years ago. A lot has changed since then. Grandma passed away last spring. She died peacefully, in her sleep, in the house she loved. The garden was in full bloom when she left. The roses were red, the lavender was purple, and the oak tree was casting its long shadow over the grass. I was holding her hand when she took her last breath. I didn't cry. I smiled, because I knew she wasn't sad. She was finally free. Free from the fear of losing her home, free from the worry about her children, free from all of it. Before she died, she made me promise one thing. She made me promise that I would never sell the land. Not to a developer, not to anyone. "It's not about the money," she said, her voice weak but clear. "It's about the roots. You need roots, Clara. You need a place that is yours." I kept my promise. I still live in the house. I turn the sunroom into a full-time art studio. I paint the garden every season: spring, summer, fall, winter. I sell my paintings online. They do well. People like the idea of a garden that almost got destroyed. They like the story behind it. I never speak to my parents.
I heard through a cousin that they moved to a small apartment in another state. They couldn't handle the shame. Marcus and Sophia don't talk to me either. I think they blame me for their own failures. That's okay. I've learned that you can't carry other people's guilt. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it, if I regret exposing my family, if I regret the public fight, if I regret destroying my parents' reputation. And I tell them the truth. I don't regret protecting my grandmother. I don't regret defending the home she loved, and I don't regret standing up for myself. But I do regret that it had to happen. I regret that money could turn a mother against her daughter, a son against his mother. I regret that greed can twist people so badly that they can't see the love right in front of them. The empty box sits on my mantle. I kept it, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of who they were, and a reminder of who I am not. I am not the invisible daughter anymore. I am not the failure. I am not the one who needs to be saved. I am Clara. I am the artist. I am the keeper of the garden. And I am enough. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that family isn't about blood. It's about who stands beside you when you're holding an empty box. It's about who sees your worth when everyone else is laughing. Grandma saw me, and because she saw me, I learned to see myself. To anyone out there who feels like the forgotten one, the overlooked one, the one who never gets the applause, I want you to know something. Your value is not determined by the people who refuse to see it. Sometimes the greatest gift you can receive is an empty box, because it clears out the lies. It makes space for the truth.
My truth is this garden. My truth is the house that almost got sold to a developer. My truth is the woman who loved me enough to give me everything, even when she had nothing left to give. My parents thought they were teaching me a lesson about worth that night. They thought the empty box would show me my place. But they were wrong. It showed me theirs. They had built their lives on things that could be taken away: money, status, power, and in the end, all of it was taken. Not by me, by their own choices. I built my life on something they could never take: love, art, a garden. And that is something they will never understand. So if you ever find yourself holding an empty box, don't cry. Open it. Look inside. Look past the velvet and the silver paper. Look for the truth hidden in the lining. Because sometimes the greatest gift isn't what's inside the box. It's the strength you find when you realize you never needed it to begin with. It's funny how life works. When I was living in my tiny apartment, scraping by on art commissions and part-time teaching, I thought I was the unlucky one. I thought Marcus and Sophia had all the luck. They had the money, the cars, the respect. I had a dream that everyone told me was worthless. But now I sit on the porch of my grandmother's house, my house, and I look at the garden, and I realize that I was always the richest one. I just didn't know it. After the article came out, things happened quickly. The city launched an investigation into the Sterling Group. They found a pattern of similar schemes across the city. Elderly homeowners being pressured by their own families to sell to developers. It was a network of greed. My parents were just a small part of it, but their involvement was the crack that broke the dam. The Sterling Group went bankrupt within a year. The CEO, Mr. Sterling, faced criminal charges for fraud and coercion. He lost everything. The luxury condos that were supposed to replace my grandmother's garden were never built. Instead, the city turned the land next to us into a public park. A public park, right next to my grandmother's garden. It felt like a small victory for decency. My parents, meanwhile, faded into obscurity. The friends who used to flock to their parties disappeared overnight. The charities that used to beg for their donations refused to return their calls. They had built their lives on a foundation of appearances, and when the appearance was shattered, there was nothing left. I heard through a distant cousin that my mother had started going to therapy. I don't know if it's true, and I don't really care. I've let go of the anger, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because I deserve peace. Marcus and Sophia eventually reached out. Marcus called me about a year after Grandma died. He sounded different, smaller, less arrogant.
I wanted to apologize, he said, for the party, for the box, for everything. I didn't say anything for a long time. I just listened to him breathe on the other end of the line. I was jealous of you, he admitted. I know that sounds crazy. You were the one with no money, no status, but Grandma loved you more, and I hated you for it. I closed my eyes. I know, I said. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said. I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. I told him that I appreciated the call, and I meant it. But I also told him that I needed time. Time to heal, time to figure out what kind of relationship we could have, if any. Sophia never called. I heard she moved to Europe. She's still a lawyer. I hope she's happy. I really do. As for me, I found a new kind of happiness. I started hosting art classes in the garden. Little kids come on Saturday mornings and we paint flowers and trees. I watch their faces light up when they mix colors, when they create something that wasn't there before. It reminds me of why I started painting in the first place. Not for money, not for fame, but for the joy of creating. I also started a small foundation in Grandma's name. We help elderly homeowners who are being pressured by developers or family members. We provide legal aid, emotional support, and a place to stay if they need it. It's my way of paying forward what Grandma gave me. A home, a safe place, a voice. Last week, I got a letter from a woman named Mrs. Patterson. She's 82 years old. Her son was trying to force her to sell her house so he could pay off his gambling debts. She was scared. She didn't know where to turn. Someone gave her my number. I drove out to see her. Her house was small, a little run down, but her garden was beautiful. Roses, just like Grandma's. I sat with her on her porch and I told her my story. I told her about the empty box. I told her about the note. I told her about the court case. She listened and then she smiled. "You're a fighter," she said. "No," I said. "I'm just someone who learned that family isn't supposed to hurt you." We helped her find a lawyer. We helped her file a restraining order against her son. We helped her secure her deed. She's still in her house. She's still tending her roses. Every time I get a letter like that, I think of Grandma. I think of the risk she took by writing that note. I think of the courage it took to stand up to her own son. She was 80 years old, frail, afraid, and she still chose to fight for me. That's the kind of person I want to be. My parents taught me a lesson about cruelty, but my grandmother taught me a lesson about love. And love, I've learned, is the only thing that lasts. The empty box is still on my mantle. It's a conversation starter. People come over, they see it, and they ask, "What's that?" I tell them the story. I tell them about the party. I tell them about the note. I tell them about the garden. And when I'm done, they always look at the box differently. They don't see an insult anymore. They see a symbol of how far someone can fall when they lose sight of what matters, and how high someone can rise when they find it. I'm not famous. I'm not rich. I drive the same car I drove 10 years ago. My clothes are simple. My life is quiet. But I have this garden. I have this house. I have the memory of a woman who loved me without condition. And I have the truth that I am worthy. I always was. I just needed an empty box to see it. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this story, it's this. Don't let anyone hand you an empty box and tell you it's all you deserve. You deserve more. You deserve a garden. You deserve a home. You deserve a love that doesn't come with strings attached. And if someone tries to tell you otherwise, look closer. Look in the lining. The truth is always there. You just have to be brave enough to find it. I'm sitting on the porch right now writing this. The sun is setting behind the oak tree. The garden is glowing gold and pink. I can hear the birds settling in for the night. It's the kind of quiet that feels like a blanket. I think about my parents sometimes. I wonder if they ever think about me. I wonder if they ever regret it. Not just the empty box, but the years of silence, the years of looking past me as if I wasn't there. I used to think that if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, they would finally see me. I thought if I painted something beautiful enough, they would stop treating me like a disappointment. But I know now that their blindness was never about me. It was about them. They couldn't see my worth because they couldn't see their own. They had to tear me down to build themselves up. That's what people like that do. I don't hate them anymore. That's the truth. I spent a long time holding on to that anger, and it was heavy. It weighed me down. It kept me from enjoying the garden. It kept me from enjoying the peace I had fought so hard to win. Letting go of the anger wasn't for them. It was for me. It was like setting down a heavy box I had been carrying for years. When I finally put it down, I could breathe. I remember the day I decided to forgive them. It wasn't a big moment. There was no apology, no reconciliation. I was standing in the garden, pruning the roses, and I thought, I'm tired. I'm tired of being angry at people who don't even think about me. And just like that, the anger lifted.